What?
Give us 1 sec to get started. Oh, okay. Okay, Warren.
So we're going to proceed with the proclamation, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I understand that Joyce has a proclamation, correct?
Yes, I do. And this is for Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Week. And I believe we have Brennan Patterson here to accept this. It reads, whereas congenital heart disease is the most commonly found birth defect in the United States, affecting 1 in every 100 births. Thousands of patients and families around the nation are affected by this disease. And whereas the National Conquering CDH organization fights for all congenital heart disease patients and their families through awareness, community, knowledge, and research. And whereas Conquering CHD Ohio's mission is to conquer congenital heart disease. They are accomplishing this through collaboration with patients, families, providers, and partner organizations to improve quality and outcome through education, support, research, and awareness. Members have also supplied meals, support, information, research grants, and Christmas presents for the children fighting this disease. And it reads, now therefore, Warren R. Copeland, Mayor of the City of Springfield and President of the City Commission, do hereby proclaim February the 7th through the 14th, 2021 as Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Week in Springfield. And we urge our citizens to recognize the 2+ million Americans living with congenital heart defects, to remember loved ones who lost their battle to CHD, and to honor the dedicated health professionals who work with these families. And it reads basically that our mayor has put his seal, and we thank you for recognizing Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Week.
So is there anything you'd like to say?
Yes. So my name is Brennan Patterson, and I'm a junior at Northeastern High School. I would like to thank the mayor for considering the proclamation and recognizing February 7th through the 14th as Congenital Heart Disease, or CHD, Awareness Week. I would like to start out by giving some statistics about CHD. 1 in 100 births are affected by CHD, and of those births, 25% need life-saving surgeries. There are over 40 types of congenital heart diseases that we know very little about. Of these 40+ types, we only know the cause for about 15%. The other 85% have an unknown cause. CHD takes twice as many babies' lives than all pediatric cancers combined, yet these cancers have 5 times the funding. This is simply to show how underfunded CHD is and how undereducated we are about the severity of CHD. Congenital heart disease affects my family on a personal level. My cousin Cash was only 4 days old when he was rushed to Dayton Children's, breathing abnormally, temperature dropping, and essentially unresponsive. It took over 4 hours to stabilize, where he was then transferred the next day to Nationwide Children's in Columbus. This is where he underwent life-saving open heart surgery at 12 days old. That was the scariest day of my life. His surgery was over 7 hours long, and he was on full bypass while they repaired his heart. He then spent the next month in the hospital while my aunt and uncle never left his side. Cash's future was unknown, but today he is a strong, smart, curious, and happy little heart warrior. The signing of this proclamation shows families like mine that the city of Springfield cares and takes congenital heart disease seriously. For my family and all other families affected by CHD, we would like to thank you all for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will go into our work session. Do we need to have a new roll call? Jill, what do you think?
Probably should.
Okay, would the clerk call the roll?
Mrs. Chilton,
Here.
Dr. Estrop? Oh, Dr. Estrop, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm here.
Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Rue,
Here.
Mr. Copeland.
Here. Okay, we're yours, Brian.
Yes, commissioners, thank you. And for today's work session, we are talking about specifically the South Limestone Corridor and the former Kroger location there at 1822 South Limestone. And I'm glad to say with us today is Larry Dillon from the Dillon Company, and his other team members, Jack Sculfort and Patrick Williams. And today on the agenda for the commission, you will be considering the approval of the Four Corners redevelopment agreement, which is the next step for this project as we continue to work with Larry and his team in redeveloping this very important piece of property in our community. And again, what's great about this project is it's looking at a bigger picture of not just the old Kroger site, but looking beyond the Kroger site and how can we revitalize and reinvest in the entire South Limestone corridor to create sustainable success into the future. So with that, I will turn it over to Larry Dillon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Brian. I'm not certain what all you might like to hear from us, but I can give you a brief update as to our activity and recognizing that we're in a public session. I'll be careful not to reveal details that are not yet solidified. But let me say that Brian, first of all, is accurate. We got engaged in this project initially because of our desire to try and help the community as the food desert was created. And that's still our first commitment. So we have targeted grocery uses for the former Kroger location. But we also are strong believers that if all we did was put in a replacement grocer, it probably wouldn't last. So we really need to create a bigger solution that's a beachhead for new investment along the South Limestone corridor, and hopefully it radiates out for the entire south side. That's a big vision, which we're not afraid of. We think that that we can, with the establishment of this Four Corners branding, that we remove the former Kroger name, and we just focus on what's happening at that intersection of Limestone Avenue and John Street. And as part of the solution that you have seen in our plans previously, we're proposing to not only revitalize the former building, but we would really like to see improvements made on Limestone, which you're already working on, staff's already working on with ODOT, but very importantly, improvements to landscaping on John Street so that we brand that intersection, we celebrate it, and we create other activity that's happening at that location. So we want to take what was a former grocery store, reinstill it, hopefully, as a grocery location, but grocery plus more. So our master plan, as has been presented to 9 different public engagement sessions, and we've achieved consensus, we believe, out of those 9 different public engagement sessions around the master plan concept, which takes that former building and tries to keep part of it as a grocery and then change the rest of it to another food-oriented destination that is somewhat similar in character to the Cohatch food station downtown, with a collection of vendors that we would target South End residents to be those vendors. We're working with a group of South End entrepreneurs that are excited about the grocery concept. So we have lots of things in motion in that regard. In addition, we've been working with staff to look beyond the borders of that former Kroger site to some adjacent properties to see how we could repurpose that. And we actually have had, with help from Tom Franzen in particular, we've identified some end users, both on our side and on the city side, folks that we could talk to again, try and expand this beachhead and have it be something more. So we're in the midst of that process. We're not in a position where we could make public announcements about signed tenants. It'd be wrong for us to start announcing any kind of tenant names that we're working with, but we're very excited that the progress is being made and that progress is accelerating as we continue. With the execution of the development agreement today, if you decide to approve that, then we'd be moving forward with our full-scale marketing program led by Pat Williams, and begin the detailed work on how do we have to modify that building, what does that cost, and then how are we going to fund it. On the funding side of the program, we have again said from the beginning that we do not need to own that property. If the property was owned somehow by the community or members of the community, that'd be just fine with us. But we need to make certain that the vision is fulfilled. So if we need to stay involved in it longer to ensure to lenders and investors that the vision is fulfilled, then we're committed to staying involved. But if there's an opportunity to somehow turn the property over to more local ownership, we'd be fully in support of that and excited about that, but only with those kinds of conditions met. So Brian, I think I'll stop there, and if there's any questions, I'd be delighted to try and answer them.
Yes, thank you, Larry, for the update. And again, the redevelopment agreement serves as really that important next step as we continue working towards the revitalization of, again, not just the Kroger property in and of itself, but that entire corridor, and specifically focused on the South Limestone and John Street intersection, which is what we're calling the Four Corners. So with that, if commissioners have questions, be glad to take those.
I have a question. This is Dave Estrup. A statement and then a question. I'm very pleased with the progress going forward and certainly will support the ordinance before us for the agreement. I'm pleased to hear of your focus on putting some kind of grocery store presence in there, but looking beyond that, I think that obviously makes a lot of sense. I am overjoyed to hear that we are only looking at not trying to give this away, because what I want to personally avoid, and I would suspect I'm not alone, is turning this over to another grocery company only to have a year from now, we're right back where we started in terms of having a turnover. So the idea of making this available to the community or a group of investors in our community makes a lot of sense to me. I don't want to see this come under the ownership of a large national chain that really doesn't give a damn except maybe to make a quick buck at the community's expense. Thank you.
Larry, Rob Brew, I really appreciate the idea of going after the rebranding of that Four Corners, because unfortunately, with the Kroger, calling it the Kroger property says abandonment, says left out, says we're forgetting about you, we're pulling out and we're done with Springfield. So I really appreciate you going after that entire area, also taking time. And as we, the city, and you, developer, are listening to the community at the same point saying, let's make sure we get the right project in here. I appreciate the patience and how important that is. I also, as we're looking at this area, I keep hearing the word mentorship. The people that are going to be coming in, we're going to have to really bring along and continue to be patient. And I just want to make sure that as a city that we are not a stumbling block as we move forward in this development, that we are doing all we can to get this area to be a positive influence in the entire community, specifically in the South End, though. So I just want to thank you, Larry, for all your effort and everything you're doing in the area with and for us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Perhaps one thing I could add, Brian and Tom and Logan and I have had a lot of dialogue about the role that we play as a real estate developer. And I had to acknowledge my weaknesses because I'm a real estate developer. I'm not a community developer. And so we've had a lot of dialogue about how we partner up with the city or other consultants that the city would bring to the table, so that we can ensure that the real estate solution that we propose is something that the community really wants and embraces, and that there's additional community programming support being delivered to that part of town. I recognize the need, and I acknowledge my inability to fill that role. So we've had extensive dialogue with Brian and Tom and Logan about that, and I think together we're working on a plan for how to cement a long-term solution. I think that's what we need.
Appreciate your consultation.
Thank you, Larry. This is Joyce. I'm going to ask Brian Heck to kind of go over where we go from here, because right now the land bank has the property and is holding it for the city. So I would appreciate Brian giving us a little bit of overview on how this worked with Dillon LLC.
Yes. And so, commissioners, as Larry said, this lays the groundwork for them to start putting forward with what's termed as phase 1 development planning into phase 2, which is, construction activities. But it lays out a timeline for transfer of the property to the Dillon Company, which at that point in time, the land bank would then transfer it to Larry, to his company. And then with that in place, the city will in turn commit the same level of funding that we had. Land bank will then flip over for a period of time. I believe it lays out 6 months to help with keeping the building going while Larry and his team are working to get the building redeveloped and occupied. So we will, assuming again the commission approves this agreement, we will be working here in the very near future on transfer of that property out of the land bank into the Dillon Company's hands.
Thank you. So this will move, once it gets to Larry, then it will move into like phase 3?
Kind of for the redevelopment agreement's sake, it's in a phase 1, phase 2 for what Larry's describing with the marketing analysis, the financial analysis and all that. And then it moves in to a phase 2, which is the hard construction. So finalizing the planning phase of it, which Larry and his team has already been doing, and then moves into the phase 2, which is the construction.
So thank you, Larry, for taking an interest in our community and being really a godsend when we needed it. So thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure, Commissioner. We really feel embraced by the greater Springfield community, and I feel like I'm at home when I'm in Springfield. So we're delighted to be here.
Thank you so much.
Rob,
Yeah.
did you want to speak?
No, I said thank you. I guess now that you asked, Larry, Don't ask a politician to speak if they want to. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
But Warren, thank you, Warren. Larry, that's so funny. Is this a stretch for Is this a stretch for you, Larry? Is this something you're like kind of taking on as a project in your career? Like this is something you wouldn't normally do? I was thinking of that earlier. Is this something you would normally do and you're kind of just committing to this in a kind of a different scope in your portfolio of projects?
Yeah, when we became aware that the Kroger was closing, Pat Williams called me and was very concerned. And we had a heartfelt discussion with each other, and we said, if there's a way that we can help this community, we should do it. Rob, I guess my answer would be, this is part and parcel of who we are. We are committed to the communities that we work in. And we were already working on some other projects in the community that would be considered for-profit projects. It's a little cliche to say this is our chance to give back, but I believe that we have some skills that can help the community with this situation, and we feel obligated and honored to have that opportunity.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
I think I can give.
Thank you very much, Larry.
So Larry, I have a question. There are a number of local entrepreneurs, some of them young and some of them Southsiders, who I think are interested in being a part of this project. Have you been working with them?
Yeah, we have. There are two young ladies in the community that we've had some private meetings with that were part of the community engagement process, and then reached out to me directly to start a dialogue and emphasize how much they wanted to help. I'll probably get these pronunciations wrong, but Catalina Remnusat is one, and Lauren Kelly is another. And so we've had dialogue with them. I've met with them on 2 occasions to have a sharing of information, because they're engaged in the community again at a different level than we are, and that's helpful for us. And I think it's probably helpful for them to be able to have a direct dialogue about what I believe can work and cannot work, at least in the world of real estate. Those two collectively, and perhaps some others that I haven't met, have been seeking out entrepreneurs that might be interested in a food hall, sets of food hall operations in the Four Corners location. And they've identified 6 or 8 different folks that we could meet with. And so we're in a dialogue about how to do that. I pushed off the timing of that a little bit for 2 reasons. One, I don't want to broadcast. I don't want to overpromise, but Pat's been in an encouraging dialogue with a grocery operation, so we wanted to keep that in the forefront of our thinking as a first goal. And so I didn't want to get started on a path on creating a food hall only to find out that a grocer might want to come in and take the entire space. That's probably not the case. It's probably the way we've sketched it, that the grocer takes part of the space and we could do food hall in the balance of the space. So I've delayed some of that introduction and dialogue with those entrepreneurs until we get a little more clarity around that, number one. And number two, I recognize that we're in this pandemic environment, and these are folks that I'd really like to meet with face to face. And so I was hoping that if we delayed a little bit, we might have greater opportunity to build more solid relationships if I could truly meet with them face to face. So they've done some work, they've identified some folks, and we're in the next 30 to 60 days, we'll be trying to have those face-to-face dialogues to see if we can move it along.
Brian,
Okay.
question. Have you had the opportunity to connect Larry with Urban Fast Forward so that the work that's being done to redevelop the south side of Glen, work Larry's doing?
Yeah, we've shared the plan, the initial plan prepared by Urban Fast Forward, and I know we've discussed that with Larry. I don't know if they've been able to connect yet or not, but that is certainly something that is a part of this and part of that process, because we don't want to duplicate efforts. So,
Right. It seems to me we have about 3 projects going on simultaneously, all in the south end. The South Limestone Street construction project itself, the Four Corners project, and then the work being done by Urban Fast Forward. So I think it is critical that we try to the degree possible coordinate all of that work and share, so we're not duplicating efforts.
yep.
And the city has done a good job of making that connection, Commissioner. Failure would be on my part in trying to find enough time to actually make the connection with Urban Fast Forward. So that's my responsibility, not the city.
Okay, anything else?
Again, I would simply say we're very proud to be involved with you as a community, and we're trying to help you make a difference. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Commissioners, we do have one add-on for the meeting today. It's appointing Amanda Lance to the Springfield Historic Landmarks Commission.
Brian, if you're done with the Dillon folks, we'll go ahead and exit.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we ready for the formal meeting?
We should adjourn the work session, Mayor.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the work session?
S-drop, so moved.
Second, Rue.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton? Mrs. Chilton? She can't hear me. Dr.
Yes.
Estra?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
And Mr. Copeland?
Yes, Mrs. Chilton came on and said yes too.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes. Everyone froze on my screen. Thanks.
Okay, now we're ready for the formal meeting.
Yes.
Okay, you want to call the roll? I call it the formal meeting to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Here.
Dr. Estra?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill? Mr. Rue?
Here.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Join me in the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Our God, we're grateful for this opportunity to serve the people of Springfield. Help us to do it well. We're excited about possibilities in our community, but we know that there will be struggles along the way. Please support us in what we're doing. In the name of God, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Move. Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrad,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. Let us begin with first readings by title only.
Providing for the issuance and sale of notes in the maximum aggregate principal amount of $6,971,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of improving the municipal water system facilities, including replacing water lines and improving the water treatment plant by installing a substation air brake and constructing a liquid ferric building, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. B, municipal sewer system facilities, including but not limited to constructing and installing sanitary and storm sewer lines, rehabilitating the city's wastewater treatment plant by replacing a primary effluent pump and substation, post aeration gates and sludge pumps, installing combined sewer overflow mitigation and inflow infiltration elimination projects, and purchasing real estate and related interests therein, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. And C, improving city facilities, including the City Hall parking garage and plaza, by improving and replacing concrete and expansion joints, together with related site improvements and necessary appurtenances thereto. Confirming and approving the acceptance and/or deposit of an EMS Priority 1 training and equipment grant in an amount up to $2,945.41 from the Ohio Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Medical Services, and authorizing the city manager, finance director, law director, and chief of the fire division perform all acts and deposit all grant funds and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said grant and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements. Authorizing the purchase of two 2022 HV 507 SFA trucks for an amount not to exceed $151,814.98 from Rush Truck Centers through the Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 5513.01B of the Ohio Revised Code. Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 4 to the agreement for consulting engineering services, Eastern Pressure District water upgrades, Phase 2 preliminary and detailed design with Burgess and Nyepel Incorporated to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $268,926 for a total amount not to exceed $1,312,011.99. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Howe Contractors Incorporated for the Eastern Pressure Water District waterline upgrade project for an amount not to exceed $7,931,000. Authorizing the law director to approve and settle a claim with Anthony Platinotis for the expenses associated with damage that occurred on his property located at 1209 Apollo Avenue on or about January 2nd, 2021, and authorizing the Director of Finance to make payment to Anthony Platinotis in the amount of $2,402.40 as full and final settlement for said damages.
Other questions or comments from commissioners on first readings? Mr. Estrad.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if a member of the staff could review exactly all that we're doing in that very first ordinance 2020-21. There's a lot of projects in there, and it would be helpful if we had some explanation of what all of those are.
Yeah, Mark, do you want to start with that and what we're doing there?
I'll start with the finance side of it. And if Chris wants to chime in any on the actual operational side of it, maybe we can do that too. Commissioner, what this is a bond anticipation note. As laid out, it's about $6.9 million. It's the third year of a 5-year note roll that we will do in anticipation of turning this into about a 20-year bond. We do these based on our capital improvement plans each year. you may recall that about the same time last year, we would have put the second year of this bond anticipation note in front of you. This includes about $1 million of new money for the upcoming year. And it really covers three main areas. It's the money is going to be used for upgrading our water utility, our sewer utility, and then some improvements to the city hall, in particular the plaza area. Chris might be able to talk a little more in depth about the projects themselves, but that's really the financing piece of what we're trying to accomplish here.
Thank you. Chris, if you could go into a little more detail, that would be helpful.
Okay, so most of the projects that Jill read off, they're projects that have been before you in some form or fashion. Some of them you've already passed legislation on. Others have just came through the budget. Some of what was mentioned were the primary effluent pumps. That is a project where we're replacing the pumps that it's the first place in our wastewater treatment system where gravity doesn't work any longer. We have to lift all of the liquids. So those are in the 90% designed, and we're getting ready for construction. There's talk about the inflow and infiltration, and that is really a fancy way of talking about the sewer linings that we do every year that we've showed you. There was stuff in there for the water treatment plant. I think the air brake project is underway and almost complete. And the liquid ferric building, that is something we'll be designing in hopefully towards the end of this year. That is, we've used dry ferric sulfate for years, and we have since learned that it is cheaper and more reliable if we switch to liquid. So we currently have a temporary setup with liquid ferric, and we will, the EPA has told us we need to get a more permanent setup. That is what, that's what that money is for. And then the parking garage and plaza upgrades, there will definitely be, some aesthetic upgrades that come along with that. Everyone will be able to see, but someone like me looks at the basement at City Hall as a bridge, and over top of that bridge is a membrane to keep water out, and there's an expansion joint. And in the 40 plus years City Hall has been there, that has worn out. So we need to replace the waterproof membrane, upgrade the expansion joint so we can keep water out of the basement and keep it from further deteriorating the concrete that is underneath.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anyone else, anything of the first readings? Clerk will proceed with second readings.
Authorizing a contribution to the Springfield Foundation in the amount of $50,000 toward the Columbia Street Cemetery project, which seeks to restore the Columbia Street Cemetery, also known as the Springfield Burial Grounds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
Yes, could our city manager go back over again on what this project entails, the Columbia Street Cemetery project?
Yes, commissioners, the Columbia Street Cemetery is a historic cemetery located right in our downtown. And, it has fallen, it's not in bad shape, but the headstones and so forth are in disrepair. And there's a lot of work that could be done to bring this great historic community asset to greater life in our community. They already use it for different historical tours and events, and it really could serve as a real shining star centerpiece in our downtown. And so what this program or project would do is would restore and rehab the existing monuments and stones that have been identified throughout. It would restore the original walking path that was located through the project of Wittenberg University and their students, as well as installing a stone wall with wrought iron fencing along the Columbia Street side with a gate that would just, again, bring this cemetery back to life in the sense of the historic community asset that it represents. There's a lot of history there. And as we know, it's certainly important for us to recognize and be able to look back on our history, and this cemetery serves just that. And so there will be along the walking paths different historical markers that would identify bits and pieces of the history that exist for the time period that people were buried in the cemetery, but also of the people that are buried in the cemetery.
Thank you. And it will be accessible to the public. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Estrop?
I just want to say, I think this is a great project, both for preservation of our history in this community, but also as an addition to downtown. So I will certainly support this ordinance.
I think we all agree. Anyone else? Call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the exercise of the city's option to renew the contract with Dayton Sweeping Service Incorporated, doing business as DSS Sweeping Service Incorporated, for the sweeping and cleaning of city streets for an amount not to exceed $165,307.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the exercise of the city's option to renew the contract with the Endurance Group LLC, doing business as Emerald Green Lawn and Landscape Pros, for the mowing of boulevards for an amount not to exceed $37,400.02.
Move to adopt. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with JCI Jones Chemicals Incorporated for the purpose of sodium hypochlorite for use by the city's wastewater treatment plant for a period of 1 year with an option to renew for 2 additional 1-year periods for an amount not to exceed $82,800.
Move to adopt.
Rob.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Republic Services of Ohio Hauling LLC for the removal of catch basin debris and trash and grit for a period of 3 years with an option to renew for 2 additional 1-year periods for an amount not to exceed $284,152.96 for the initial 3-year period.
Move to adopt.
Second, Estrop.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
Yes. Is there more grit now that's in our catch basins than usual?
Yes, Commissioners, I'll have Chris Moore answer that.
Generally speaking, no. The number, the amount of grit we get is very dependent on how frequently we can sweep the streets and how often we can clean the sewers. So this grit ends up 2 places. Some of the grit is hauled away from this facility, and it comes from stuff dumped out of street sweepers and dumped out of sewer vacuums. And then the other grit is grit that is captured at the wastewater treatment plant that travels through the pipes. So a very rainy period that washes more stuff to the treatment plant can increase the amount of grit that we have. But our catch basins, it's a pretty steady number from the catch basins. It's what's in the pipes is what we notice the most.
Thank you for that education.
Question. Do I understand correctly that the $284,152.96, that covers 3 years, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming purchases and the obtaining of services for the city and providing for payments therefore, and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Estrop.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a lease purchase agreement with Truist Bank in the principal amount of $1,081,329.22 to finance the purchase of a Sutphen SL 100 aerial ladder truck. Authorizing the city manager, finance director, city treasurer, and law director to do all things they deem necessary to enter into and complete the subject lease transaction and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Move to-
Estrop.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Estrop?
Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering if you could describe this aerial truck. Is it something for the fire division or the service department, or what kind of truck are we getting here?
Yes, Commissioner. So this is the replacement of a ladder truck in our fire division. So it is fire apparatus. It's a continued commitment as we committed with the levy to invest in our first responders and replace our equipment and infrastructure as needed. Brian Miller and his team, I know Assistant Chief Bob Smith is also on the meeting today, have put a lot of work into this. Brian, I don't know if you want to provide any additional comments beyond that, but this is much needed apparatus, new apparatus for our fire division, and a continued effort to invest in the equipment and infrastructure that serves our community.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So this is a long-awaited arrival to our fleet, and we still have another 12 to 14-month build period in front of us. But it kind of started with some deferred purchases. I mean, some of you weren't even on the commission some time back. We purchased a used ladder truck because budget was so tight. So this brand new ladder truck will replace a 2001 that we bought used from Brunswick, Ohio. It's become a maintenance nightmare in our fleet, quite frankly, and it's getting old enough, along with our other ladder, that we have to have custom parts built for it. Our strategic plan that we just finished a little while ago got the committee together, built the specs for this. So we're super happy that those folks put together their time and picked a ladder truck that's going to suit our needs for the next 20 to 25 years. My hat's off to the hard work they put in.
Well, thanks to everyone involved, and thank you, Chief.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase of a Sutphen SL 100 aerial ladder truck from Sutphen Corporation for an amount not to exceed $1,081,329.22 through the HGAC Cooperative Purchasing Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency therein.
So
Move
moved.
to adopt. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
Yes, just to make sure I understand this, this ordinance is a lease purchase agreement for the above one that we just had on 024-21, is that correct?
Yeah, so this item is actually the purchase, authorization of the purchase through the cooperative purchasing program. The ordinance before that was just approved set up the lease purchase agreement with the bank.
Thank you.
When do we expect delivery? A couple years, year and a half?
Brian indicated probably 12 to 14 months build time for this. Obviously, we hope sooner, but we wanted to get in line as quick as possible so that we hopefully, I mean, fingers crossed we'd see it before the end of this year, but most likely it'll be early 2022.
I will have an eager 4-year-old that will want to see it.
Definitely.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to apply for an assistance to firefighter grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, in an amount up to $500,000 for the purchase of a fire engine, authorizing the local matching expenditure in an amount not to exceed $50,000, authorizing the city manager, finance director, law director, and fire chief to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said grant application and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second, Estrop.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question. So could our fire chief explain the difference basically in this one and the ladder truck, and how do they relate? Or do they relate at all?
Well, I think your last statement's correct. They don't really relate, other than our fleet is old, right? And so we're looking for an opportunity to replace some vehicles. Some we pay for, some we ask for some federal assistance. So this is permission for us to apply for a grant. We would receive roughly $500,000. We have a 10% match, which is our $50,000 ask there. So every year there's the Assistance for Firefighters grant. We do an assessment of all of our equipment and vehicles and things, and we determine based on our equipment plus what is decided to be a high priority funding item. Every year FEMA changes what they see as a high priority funding item. We have a 1995 engine in service, frontline service at Station 3 on Selma Road. 26-year-old fire apparatus is, again, a bit of a maintenance headache. You guys, I think, are aware of some of the limitations we have with Station 3. So hopefully the timing works out. There's a 2-year period of performance. If we're given this grant, that we would hopefully see the engine show up somewhere mid-2023 and maybe have a solution for where we park it. But this is the permission just to apply for that grant.
Thank you. I just want to commend your department for seeking out funding.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to execute a Four Corners redevelopment agreement with Dillon LLC for the redevelopment of the intersection of South Limestone Street and East John Street and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second, Estrop.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
Yes, just for our citizens who may have just started watching the commission meeting, Brian, could you explain exactly what this means with this ordinance?
Yes. So again, this takes the next step. So currently we have a letter of intent in place with Dillon Company for the Four Corners redevelopment. And this takes it to the next step, which is phase 1, phase 2 development, which phase 1 is finalizing planning activities around the Four Corners, and phase 2 moving into the actual hard construction. And then also sets some timeframes and lays out next steps as far as transfer of the property and when activities should and will begin under this agreement. Again, this is important to have in place as we do with any type of redevelopment project, as we work with a third-party partner to advance and move a project forward.
Thank you. Great things happening.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Excuse me, Mayor. I have 2 emails I'd like to read from citizens related to this topic.
Okay.
The first one comes from Claudia Fett of South Fountain Avenue. Will the following grocery stores, Trader Joe's and/or Whole Foods, be approached to be part of the Four Corners development? We are thinking about the fact that Whole Foods has made an example of being located in areas of need. Second statement comes from Kathleen Miller of 1135 East Possum Road. My idea is to add to the meeting for rebuilding the South Limestone location would include a space or plan for a farmer's market. Some land for a community garden would also be beneficial that is run by and belongs to the community.
I'll just, Mayor, if it's okay, I'll respond to both comments quickly. So the first one about the type of grocer, I do know Dylan and his team is leaving no stone unturned in who they are reaching out to and trying to work with. And as Larry mentioned in the work session, is very hopeful that they will have a grocer lined up here in the very near future. Secondly, as it relates to the farmer's garden or farmer's market concept, part of what Larry wants to do is activate the space. And part of that activation is the food hall, but also he's creating a green space area would be the south of the existing building. Used to be the former furniture repair shop that we demolished. Was an auction house previously. And so he wants to create an outdoor open space that is a place for gathering and a place for destination and activity. And I'm certain through programming and so forth, a farmer's market would fit into the types of activities that Larry would like to attract to that location.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement by and between the city of Springfield, Ohio, and the International Association of Firefighters, Local 333, AFL-CIO, CLC, directing the implementation and performance of the provisions of such agreement and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt. Rue.
Second, Estrop.
Been moved and seconded. I just want to comment that we're really glad to see this settlement reached, and we look forward to working with these folks in the future. Anyone else?
I would echo that, Mayor. I want to say congratulations to all involved, and we look forward to moving forward together, as it says.
I think it goes up. I mean, we need to also mention that this would never have been possible if the city of Springfield, the citizens would not have stepped up to vote the additional 0.4% tax that we desperately needed. And just none of this would have been possible to take care of our staff like this. So I'm just really grateful we're able to do this.
I just thank our staff.
Commissioner Chilton, did you want to say something?
I just want to thank our staff for negotiating and working with the firefighters union.
I was just going to add, to build on what Commissioner Rue said, if it were not for the voters of Springfield, we would not have been able to do this, nor would we be in a position to be replacing some of the equipment that we're talking about replacing, and much less repaving some of the streets that so badly needed repaving. So I think you hit it right on the head, Rob, in terms of our thanks certainly to the negotiators, but also to the people of Springfield who stepped up and provided the financial resources for us to be able to do all of this.
Yeah, this is a part of our attempt to live up to what we promised.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to accept conveyance of an easement and dedicating those certain rights in real estate for the purpose of constructing, reconstructing, operating, and maintaining stormwater, sewer, and sanitary sewer infrastructure and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
And the next item that was added to the agenda appointing Amanda Lance to the Springfield Historic Landmarks Commission.
Huda.
Second,
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. That concludes our agenda. Are there other items that come before us from commissioners? Mr. Estrada.
Thanks. Thank you, Warren. In terms of questions, the usual question for Brian and Mark, we don't need to address the south side because we've done that throughout the meeting. But for Brian, how are we doing in terms of city services as it relates to COVID? And Mark, how are we doing financially at this point?
Yes, Commissioner. So as an organization, we've actually seen over the public safety forces our lowest numbers in a while in terms of those impacted by COVID, which is a positive. At City Hall, not quite the same. We've had some exposures and some quarantines, and so we've had a couple divisions impacted significantly by that. And so whether they're positive or out on quarantine due to the exposure of those positives, we have a higher number of people in City Hall that are impacted at this time. But it has not impacted overall the ability for us to continue to provide the services necessary to our citizens. So we have not seen any negative impact in that regard at this point in time. But we're hopeful that those that are positive are able to recover quickly and with little issue with the virus, and then also those on quarantine do not become sick due to their exposures. And so we're hopeful to have them back here soon, hopefully. But again, the organization is going strong and continues to provide the services that our citizens have come to expect. I do want to just spend a quick moment on the vaccine. The health department's been doing a phenomenal job in rolling out both the phase 1A, and we know over 70% of our firefighters have received the vaccine at this point, which is exciting, both their first and second doses. And then I know they're rolling out with phase 1B. I know Warren was able to get a vaccine, and I know several of you will come up here soon in the phase 1B rollout. And K through 12 teachers I know are starting to schedule appointments for as early as next week as they fall into that vaccine schedule. I did want to share, Commissioner Chilton had shared with me last week a vaccine line. So a lot of it has been going through the website. So again, if you need information about vaccines, you can certainly go to the website for the Clark County Combined Health District at ccchd.com. But not everybody has the luxury of a computer or a smart device. So I also want to provide a phone number, which is a vaccine line. And that number is 937-717-2439. So if for some reason, again, the easiest is to go online to ccchd.com. But again, if you do not have access to the internet or a computer or smartphone, you can certainly call at 937-717-2439 to get additional information about the vaccine. So I did want to take the time just to share that information. It's important for our community. We want to see people get vaccinated. That is the best thing that we can do as a community collectively to tamp down the impact and the effect that this virus is having on our community and across the country is by folks getting vaccinated. So just wanted to put that little plug in there. Mark?
I just want to comment on the shot. I got a flu shot earlier this year, and my reaction to the shot I got just a week ago now, it was about the same as the regular flu shot was in terms of the reaction. A little soreness in my arm for 2 days, and that's about it. So I really encourage people. And one of the reasons I went out and did it the way I did it was to encourage people to get the shot. It is not any worse than the other shots that we've taken over our lives. And my wife went with me. I did marry a woman a little bit older than me, so I kid her about that all the time. 6 months, but in any event, she got a shot at the same time and she had the same reaction I did, a little bit of soreness, that's about it. So you don't have to be afraid of it. And the only way we're gonna help each other get through this is for us to get enough shots that the virus can't grow anymore. So let's go for it.
Virginia and I are headed out today, in fact, at 4 o'clock to get our vaccination. So glad to hear that, Warren, that it amounted to nothing more than just a regular flu shot. Thank you.
I'll also say there was an organization that made shots available to deaf care providers in our area, and I did receive one a week ago and experienced the same, just a bit of a kind of hit, like somebody popped me in the arm, and then it was done, and going for the second round here in about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So just grateful that some of the organizations are able to make this available for people that are on the front line, like I am, meeting with families that have gone through loss like this. So just grateful for the opportunity, but I get the shot.
And I would like to say briefly that our African-American community, we are often complaining about disparity. This is something that we cause ourselves if we don't get the shot. So when it's my turn, I plan on getting a shot. I needed it explained to me, and I had to do my own research that this rolled out pretty fast with the vaccine. But we don't take into consideration that the government gave those pharmaceutical companies money to do everything as far as the research. And normally, like with the flu shot, it took like, what, 5 or 6 years? You know, the funding just wasn't there. And oftentimes funders will say, okay, you do step 1. If that's successful, do step 2. If that's successful, we'll give you more money. But in this instance, our US government said, here's all the money that you need. So when it's my turn, I'm going to get my shot. So I encourage other African Americans to do your own research and go get the shot when it's your turn. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. The other thing I want to say is I was in a couple of conversations this last week that talked about, and one of them was an email that Springfield was shrinking. That's not true. Springfield is growing. And that was in the newspaper this week even. So our population is growing. It is not declining. And we have had some very good successes in terms of jobs and housing. And I think, these are good signs that Springfield is alive and moving. And we're proud of that. And I hope all the citizens of Springfield can get in on the improvements going on in Springfield. I also listened in on the conversation about the South Side development this last week. And I think there's some really interesting work being done there to try to figure out ways to improve basically the area from South Lime to South. Well, I guess basically over to I'm not sure how far south. Do you remember, Joyce?
It's John Street to
What?
No, I don't remember.
John Street to Leffel, wasn't it?
I thought it was like we were looking at Pleasant Street.
Pleasant,
Oh.
Sharon / State Street, and then also Yellow Springs to Center, which is the next phase over from South Limestone to Center Street. So it'll really be, as Warren indicated, all the way from South Limestone to South Yellow Springs, Pleasant, down to Perrin / State Street.
Yeah.
And I
So-
was referencing even another project. So there's so much going on. That's really
Yes.
good.
Yeah. We have some good things happening and we need to build on them. Anyone else?
Well, Mark, how are we doing financially?
Sure, I'd be happy to comment.
Commissioner. I think in a previous meeting, I outlined that we had a strong 2020, and we've been lucky enough to continue that into the first month of the year. We're up actually 11% in income tax collections year over year. So that was a nice surprise. And our cash position remains strong. It's very early in the year and a little bit too soon to make projections about how we'll come out for the year, but we're off to a good start.
Great. Thank you.
Again, when I am involved in meetings with mayors of other cities, they wish they had the results we're having right now. So Springfield is moving up, and we should be proud of it.
Absolutely.
Anybody want to adjourn?
Well,
So,
before we adjourn, I just wanted to wish
Okay.
Deacon Euless Rhodes of Restored Life Church a happy birthday. He is 100 years old today. He was born on Groundhog Day. So
Awesome.
happy birthday, Deacon Rhodes.
Happy birthday.
Very good. Anybody else? Okay, everybody want to adjourn then?
So
Move to adjourn. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes?
Dr. Estrada,
yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.